The Pacers ran laps around the Doc Rivers-coached Milwaukee Bucks. So what about Phoenix? The Suns trying to even up the books there as they took on big bad Minnesota. This was the early game on the card. So I was actually watching I used to call them the Indians. Now I guess they're named after a bridge. The Guardians were playing the Red Sox. I was watching that game, and then I watched the Dodgers, a bit of the Dodgers and the Nationals. Not much attitude for Washington in that game. But then I had to flip over to the Suns and the Timberwolves. So if you didn't watch it, the reason I left those baseball games is because I was doing my public service, my good mitzvah of the day. I was watching. So Jaden Daniels, who? Jaden Daniels. Put some shine on my name. Jaden Daniels tickling the nets with 25 points. All 5 starters scored in double figures as the Timberwolves zoom past the Suns 105-93. So Minnesota now, they take a 2-0 series lead. They hold serve at home. All of the pressure is on Phoenix now going back to Arizona. They have to win both games. One slip up and big-time problems. But the better story is there. That's where we start, on the side of the ledger from the Grand Canyon State, where Kevin Durant is getting absolutely charbroiled for his performance in these first 2 games for the Suns. And so let's discuss that. The question, does Kevin Durant deserve the bashing that he is getting because the Suns have lost both these games? So I've got store brand, pufferfish, and GPS. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to have a Juicy Lucy. Now, when I was in Minnesota, I think I ate at all of the top-rated Juicy Lucy places, and I enjoyed every one. I thought my favorite was in St. Paul, actually. I thought the one over there, I thought was the top one I had at the Nook. I think it was called the Nook there. I thought that was great. Anyway, so number one. Yes. To answer the question, does Kevin Durant deserve the bashing he's getting because of the Suns' situation in the postseason? The answer, I'm nodding my head again, yes. The answer is yes. You're Kevin Durant, when he went to Arizona, billed as the generational superstar. Even though he had failed in Brooklyn, it was going to be different. It was going to be different. Durant, he left Brooklyn, jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, and said, I got to get out to the West. I got to go to Arizona. So he's out in Arizona, the Bohemian baller, Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper. He's in Arizona, and they got Bradley Beal for him. They picked Bradley Beal up from the Wizards. Devin Booker was already there. These are 3 big-time players. It's a 3-headed, fire-breathing dragon. Except the dragon doesn't have any fire. What do you do? And so it's false advertising. False advertising. It is a results-based business. All business is result-based. And Kevin Durant, a name brand first ballot Hall of Famer, as he will join Muffet McGraw in the Hall of Fame. But Kevin Durant, name brand product, he has been a store brand results guy. Store brand results. What's my evidence? Now, the point total doesn't seem that bad. Durant didn't play particularly great in the game last night. He had 18 points, but 49 points overall in the first 2 games. However, while Durant has been on the court, running back and forth, getting cardio, the Arizona basketball team, the team that plays in Phoenix, Durant, while he's been out there, the Suns have been outscored by 44 points with him on the court. 44 points. Now, I never played in the NBA. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express recently, and so I know that's pretty good. If you're Minnesota, not if you're Arizona or Phoenix, rather. I mean, my God. The Suns have absolutely unraveled against a team they were supposed to have all of the playoff experience with Devin Booker and Durant, not necessarily Bradley Beal, but they were the seasoned veterans. And they had a championship coach, wink, wink, nod, nod, in Frank Vogel. We know that's not a real championship, but nonetheless, this was not supposed to be a domination situation. Even if you thought Minnesota was going to win the first 2 games, you did not expect them to blow the Suns off the court, which happened. And the most humiliating thing for Phoenix, if you saw the game, was Anthony Edwards, who has dubbed himself God's gift to basketball. Anthony Edwards, who I'm not ripping him, I like the guy, but Anthony Edwards stunk at a time you can't stink, and it didn't matter. The T-Wolves still won the game. The Suns lost to Jaden Daniels. Wowzer. And Devin Booker, not quite as bad as Kevin Durant, but while Booker's been on the court, the Suns have been outscored by 39 points, which I don't think is all that good. So Phoenix, they look disjointed. You always look bad when you lose, but they're a special kind of bad. Nothing smooth, everything difficult. The puzzle pieces just don't appear to fit. And now they go back to try to avoid a humiliation of losing 3 in a row, and then you're on death's doorstep after that to lose the playoff series. Now, page 2 here, we head to Philadelphia, where Joel Embiid, that's a basketball player, said that last-second loss the other night at the Garden to the Knickerbockers was worse for the Sixers than the famous loss. Remember, if you're old enough to remember back in 2019 before the pandemic, when the team from Canada won the championship, and on their way to winning the championship, Kawhi Leonard, bouncy, it goes in! Bouncy, it went in! Big shot for the Raptors. I was back in 2019. So the question, Joel Embiid saying that this latest loss to the Knickerbockers, blowing a 5-point lead in the final 30 seconds, worse than the dagger from the claw, Kawhi Leonard. Does that work for you? Well, Joel Embiid, it's his opinion. It's not a good opinion. I'm going to question the judgment of Joel Embiid. Here's why. This is what I call a puffer fish situation. It's puffery. Okay, it's puffer. It's exaggeration. Because I recall, and maybe you forgot, Joel Embiid walking through the bowels of the arena after that shot went in for Kawhi, crying like he got an F on his report card and he had to go home to mom and dad expected him to get A's and B's, and he got an F. Man, was he crying. And it's also not an apples-to-apples comparison because the Kawhi basket was the kill shot. That was Game 7. Hey, goodbye. Game 7, you lost. The Knicks loss is Game 2. And Philadelphia, if they've got any machismo, they'll come back and they'll make this a series. It's not a non-fatal loss. It's a sad loss. It's a depressing loss, but it's not worse than Kawhi Leonard, because if the Kawhi Leonard shot doesn't go in, you have a shot of winning the game, advancing further in the playoffs. Maybe you're the one that wins the championship, although you did have Ben Simmons on that team, so highly unlikely. All right, final point. We now go to Boston as we continue to parse the words of teams and players and coaches in the NBA playoffs. And this caught my attention. Several of you who listen to us, the Ben Maller Show here on Fox, via our home in Boston on the Sports Hub, sent this to me that the Celtics, and we're not going to talk about the game, don't worry. Listen, the Celtics clearly better than the shorthanded Miami Heat. This should at most go 5 games. It really should be a sweep without Jimmy Buckets for Miami, but that's a different conversation. So let them play Joe. Let them play Joe, filling the content machine here. Coach Joe Mazzulla was asked if he was bothered about his Celtics not being represented at all in any category across the board for the NBA awards. Now, they announced recently all the finalists, the top 3 in every category, and not a single Celtic showed up on any award. Boston, for much of the year, the top team in the NBA during the regular season, and historically, this is one of the all-time great regular season Celtic teams. Take that, Larry Bird, Bill Russell. Statistically, it is during the regular season with the Tatum-led Celtics, but yet not a single Boston player finished in the top 3 in any category. 6th Man of the Year, MVP, Most Improved, none of that. Zippo. So Mazzulla was asked about that, if he was bothered. He was bothered by the Celtics not being represented at all. His response, he said, quote, "No, not at all. I think it's beautiful. Why would you get an award for the past?" Close quote. So how do you classify? How do you classify Joe Mazzulla being pleased that none of the Celtics are even in the top 3 for these individual awards? So I would classify this as unorthodox, out of the orthodoxy, kooky. I would put it in the kooky category. Joe Mazzulla did not toe the company line. He did not. His GPS is set for off the beaten path with these answers. The boilerplate response. Now, you've consumed sports long enough, right? We're all grown up here. There's not a lot of kids listening at the time we're on. So you consume sports. What does the coach normally say in any sport across the board if they're asked about a player being up for an MVP or some individual award? What do they always say? What's the boilerplate response? Ding, 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 ding. They say it's a travesty. They say it's unfair. I stand by my players. This is not right. The voters got it wrong. Shame on them. It's a blasphemy. But not Joe. Not let him play Joe Mazzulla. As again, he's agnostic when it comes to awards. It's a singular goal. We are here to win a championship. You can win awards and win a championship. You are able to do both things. It is conceivable to do both of those things. And let me point out that technically everything that anyone has ever accomplished, by definition, is in the past. For example, if the Celtics, and they are the favorite to win the championship, if Boston does win the championship later this summer, and they'll have a little duck boat parade, and they'll celebrate Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all these guys. But then they have to wait because they don't get their rings right away. They have to design them, and then they have to make them, and so they'll have to wait several months to get their rings. So does that mean Joe Mazzulla's like, no, nobody gets rings because that's a past accomplishment? Sorry, you don't get that. And that mindset would be great. Like you go to have a meal, go to buy cotton candy at the state fair. I'm good. I don't need to pay for that. I'm all right.